an organizer, and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi Abhay, hi Rahul. You can try to unmute yourself from your side because I've already unmuted both of you. There should be an unmute button there. Hi Rahul, I got your message. Can you try to speak as well? Hi Abhay.
Hi, Bomik. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'll go on mute again.
Okay, okay. Hi Isha.
Hello.
Hello. I got your point there, Rahul. If you are joining via app, right, that mute button sometimes it doesn't work. So I'll just try to unmute you from here. Okay, can you speak now?
Yeah. Yes, it's working now.
Okay, great, great.
Yes, it's working.
Yeah. We'll just wait for some time for others to join as well. Meanwhile, let me just prepare the things on my side. Okay. Hi Rohi, I got your message.
Yeah, hello.
Hello. Okay, I think we can give it a start. Almost all of us are here. Mansi is not here. Mugdha is not here. That's fine. Let's actually give it a start. Yeah. I hope you all can see my screen. Uh,
Yeah, right, Bhumik.
okay. Okay. So yesterday we just looked into some minor parts. Just started with the basics. There is something that I should inform before I start is that because each and every day's session is getting recorded. So there is something that I saw as a problem in the recording. The problem is simple. If I am speaking too loudly or too fast, then it is not capturing all the details. So when you look at the recorded video, you will find that it's not able to capture all the things. So that's why I,
You guys using me. Use
I'm sorry, I was not able to get you. You may want to type. Yes, there was some problem. I think you can hear me now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
better now.
Okay. Okay. So what I was saying is I'll speak a little bit slowly. Okay. The reason being I saw the recording. If I speak fast, then it is not able to record all the things. So that's why I'm simply going to speak quite slowly. Please wait for a moment. Okay, I'm able to type as well. Good, there was some problem. Fine, then what I will do, let me start now. Okay, so until yesterday, we have only seen until strings. Okay, so we have seen some functions of string, and that's all that we have seen. Okay, so give me 1 minute. Let me just do one thing. Okay. Um, I will share my screen. Okay, fine. I think I have reshared my screen. It will come to you in 2 minutes. I think you can see it now. What I was saying is we have covered only a few things in string, so we'll just continue from there. So these are the functions which can mostly be used with string. Now it might sound very, very simple, very uh, small in nature, but I can assure you when we are going to do the data analysis part, this is going to be very helpful. Example given, what we usually do with things like these, if let's say I want to take a count, okay, I want to take a count of the number of times a character is repeated in the string. These are kind of operations that will be really useful when we are going to do the data analysis. The reason why this will be useful is because string is actually a type of list in Python, and when we look into details like Python lists, we will come to know what is their importance. So example given, I'll just create a new list vstring2 and I'll give it the name programming. Okay, so I just pressed shift enter and I went into the next line. Now a variable called vstring2 is already defined. I can see that it has a value of programming, and if I look at the type, it is string. Right now, in this case, let's say I would like to only extract certain parts from that string. So what I can usually do is, string is inherently a list of objects, and hence if I say 1 colon this, then what it is essentially doing is it is excluding the first letter in this string, which is p. The reason being, as we said yesterday, the indexing in Python starts from 0. So had it been the case that I had used 0, then it would have not cut anything. I would have got the entire string because the start of the string starts from 0. So the way we count this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. In the same way, let's say I'll just need this part gram. Then what can I do to get that gram? So I'll just count from where it is starting. It's 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so it is starting from 3. Let's see if this works. Okay, see, I am getting gramming, but I don't need gramming. I just need a gram. So I need to specify some kind of end, right? So I need to go until 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, let me say vstring2 3 colon 7. In this way, I am able to get the exact word or the exact sub word from the entire word, right? So this is the way we can look into specific sections of a list. When we go inside a list, we will look at more options, but as of now, these are things when it comes to strings, which is going to be very, very useful when we are going to do data analysis. Example given, in many cases, we will see that there is actually messy data. And when I say messy data, there can be text fields which are not properly organized, which does not have proper way in which words are organized. The sentences are not organized, then we'll have to do a lot of such things to play around with the data and to prepare the data. So that's where these kind of things will be useful. Similarly, the rest of the things will be useful as well. For example, one of the most common things that we do is something like this. This is quite often used, but for some very specific cases. If you see, what we are doing here is we are trying to reverse the string. Now, programming has been entirely reversed. So what I can essentially say is v string 2 is equal to, we are going to look at the operators, don't worry. What equal to means will be shown. But as of now, if I simply say v string 2 equal to v string 2 in third brackets colon minus 1, then it says false. I can clearly say that this word programming is not a palindrome. Okay, I hope you know what is a palindrome. A palindrome is a word which, if reversed, is the same. So let's say pal word, I'll take a new word or a new string as level. This is also not a palindrome because it needs to be in small. So I've created a variable with a word which is a palindrome, and a palindrome means that it is the same when reversed. In this case, let me see if the value is saved properly. Yes, let me see what is the type of the word. It is string. Good. Now I want to know if pal word is equal to pal word in third brackets 2 times colon and minus 1. Okay, in this case it is going to return true. We skipped a little bit, don't worry about what is this double equal to and so on, but you simply need to remember that these are operations of string that I have already shared in the document. I'll again share the document after this session is over. So in this case, you should be able to do a lot of things. However, even more important than these start, stop, and colon minus 1 is upper and lower, because using upper and lower, we usually do a lot of activities. For example, if I do pal word dot upper, then it is going to make it into uppercase. And then if I do pal word dot upper dot lower, it's going to turn it back into lowercase. The reason why I wanted to show you this is because this is simply a function which is inbuilt. I have not imported any Python libraries to do this activity, right? This is by default available there. And the reason why I showed you this line is because one function can be chained with another function and so on and so forth. This is a very important feature when it comes to Python, that I can actually pass this variable with a dot to this function, and then the output of pal word dot upper is then passed on to the function lower by means of a dot. This is as simple as if you or any one of you have ever worked into Unix programming. We use the pipe character to send the output of one program or one command into the other one. In the same way, this dot here is actually working. Right. Give me 1 minute. Fine. Sorry. Okay. Then let's go ahead. But before we do that, we are going to look into something else, which is lists now. I would like to know if you have any questions. If you have, please unmute and you can ask. Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, Rohi is typing something. No questions. Okay, okay. Thank you, Rohi. Fine. Then I'll take that as a no. Okay. Then we will start with the next most important uh, variable, or let's say data type, which is there into Python. This is where I'm going to spend some time because this is a really important. So let me just go back and okay, no problem. One of the most important data types in data science in Python, I'll say, for data science. Okay. The reason why this is so important is because a list is basically used for a variety of, let's say, purposes. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm simply going to take a paint. I'm going to show you something before we go ahead. In the meanwhile, let me just save this notebook and let that paint window open. Okay, it has opened now. I hope you can see it as well. So just I'll take my pen and I'm going to show you what this list is. This list essentially is anybody who has worked with any databases or any Excel sheets earlier. Okay, let's assume you are still working with a table or with an Excel and it has a few rows and a few columns as usual. So let's say I have column A, I have column B, C, D, E, and F. Okay. Each and every of these columns can actually be considered as a list. So this entire column of objects, irrespective of how many rows it may have, let's say I have 4 rows. So this is one row, this is the second row, this is the third row. And in there, let's say I have some values A1, A2, A3, and in the last row, I have A4. So essentially what is happening here is I have this entire thing as a list. Okay, in Python, you can consider each and every column with all the values in that column as a list. Okay, so this is the simplest way of representing or understanding a list. Now, there is one big difference. What usually happens in an RDBMS, or what usually happens or may not happen in an Excel sheet. What happens in an Excel sheet, if let's say I have a column like this, or I have a column like this, I may want to put some data here, which is a numeric data, let's say 10. In the next column, I might put a text B. In the third row, I'm sorry, in the first row, I have put 10. In the second row, I have put B. Right, and the third, again, I'm putting 101.22. Okay, in this way, as you can see, in here, what I'm doing essentially is in this list or in this column, which is B, I can in an Excel sheet put multiple different varieties of data. The first one is an integer, second one is actually a character, the third one is a floating point, which is nothing but a decimal. This is not really possible into any databases. So what happens is when we create a database or when we are using a database, we often say that there are certain, let's say, data types. So let's say the data type of this is DT. Let's say the data type is integer. If the data type of column A is integer or the data type of column B is float or the data type of column E is, let's say, anything in the decimal range, then what happens is in this column E, I can almost always put only float. If I need to put something else, I'm sorry, I can't. It is restricted by means of the RDMMS because that's the kind of typecasting that it does. In case of Excel, that is not the case, right? You can open an Excel sheet from your end and you can try this out. In any column, you can put any kind of value. We already know that. And that's exactly what happens in a list. So in case of a Python list, that is what is exactly going to happen. So what we are going to do, let's create a list. Okay. So first of all, I'll create a list which is, let's say, L underscore age, and a list is defined by means of third brackets. So let's say I'm going to enter our ages. We are 32 years old, 34 years old, 31 years old, 35 years old, 36 years old. Let's say we are 5 people other than me in the call. I see Abhay, Isha, Rahul, Rohi, and Sarangs. So let's say these are the ages of all of us, right? You may want to reduce that, there is no problem. So this becomes a list, right? If you want to print the type, then you can clearly see that it is a list. Now, what benefit this list is adding is, this is simply a unique list of objects. Okay, and then at later point in time, this list can be combined with other lists to do a lot of activities, which is very, very essential when it comes to the data science lifecycle. The most important part of data science lifecycle is to prepare or to clean the data. And that's where this list variable is going to be really, really useful, irrespective of whether you have a static list of values like this, or you have a table where each and every column is essentially a list, right? So now what I can do is I can create another list, which is my address, address, or maybe I'll say, I don't know, student ID. Okay. Now I'm going to create a problem here. So let's say the first student ID is 11, second is 22, 33. Then the fourth one, I don't have the student ID, so I'll say NA or not available. And then the fifth one, I'm going to say 55. Okay, as you can see, when I created this list, it did not give me any errors. What happens if I print this list? If I print this list, I can see that I'm able to see the list. If I print the type, then I can clearly see that I can see all the values, right? And I can also see the type as a list. Fine. Now this is where the importance of list comes into picture. So list is never going to restrict you to put any one kind of data type into it. Now what we can do, let's combine two lists. So we can create lists of lists. Okay, this is called list of lists. Okay, in this case, what I'll say, list of list students, and inside this third bracket, I'll say L age, or maybe I'll start with the student ID, L student ID and L age. Let's see what is going to happen if I do this L students. As you can see, I have now created a list of lists. So each list is represented as an item here, which means L students list has essentially 2 items and not 10. It has 2 items. Please remember this. It has 2 items. Why it has 2 items? Because the outer bracket belongs to the list LL students. Okay. And the inner brackets represent the item. So this is item number 1, which is essentially the L student ID, and then the next item, which is the L age. Okay. This might sound a little confusing at first, but this is the most easy way to store the data inside a list of lists. If I look at the type, I'll also find that it is still a list. Okay. Please also remember each and every variable or each and every object which we create into Python is actually case sensitive, which means I cannot write this. Okay, it is trying to execute it and then it is going to fail. It's going to fail because it doesn't exist. Name LL students is not defined. Why? Because I have put this as a capital L. Okay, so until this point in time, do we have any queries?
Bhumik, where we are going to define the data type? At first place, is list a kind of data type?
Yes, that's a very good
I mean,
question.
I see that you are declaring, but you are not specifying any data type
Right,
when you are
right,
uh, typing this. Yeah.
right. So to answer that question, I'll go back to something which we covered on day one. I'll go back upstairs and I will show you something. What I did when I started looking into data types, give me 1 minute. This needs to be broadened actually. So I'll just say this. When I started off yesterday, as you can see, I said data types is something to store some value. So it is just a variable which is going to store some value. Usually in any programming language that you are also correct about, I need to define the data type. So I say something like this, right? I say what is the data type, then I say the name of the variable, then I say what is, let's say, default value, and then I say uh, kind of an ending thing to signify the end of the line. In case of Python, I simply say vAge is equal to 10. Python is kind of an interpreted language, in which case what I need to do is that I never have to define the data type of a variable. I have to put some initial value to the variable. Based on the value, Python will enforce a data type to the variable. Now, this is one way of looking at it. As you can see, I assigned vAge is equal to 10. I typed type vAge, and then if I run this, it's going to say integer. If I say vname is equal to single quotes without any value or maybe even a space or two spaces, it's going to consider this as a string, right? The interesting thing is, now this is an advantage, this is a disadvantage. Why this is an advantage? Because I do not have to remember the types of data types which is available in the programming language. In other cases, let's say in C, C++, Java, I need to remember, okay, int is a type, float is a type, this is a type, that is a type, so on and so forth. In Python, I don't have to remember. I simply put the value, it is going to decide. But there is a problem. The problem is in C or C++, this is something that we discussed in the last session as well. If you can see my screen, C, C++, Fortran, Java, these are compiled languages which has to be explicitly told the data type and then they have to be compiled. While Python is an implicitly compiled language, you don't have to compile it. It runs by itself. I create a script, I execute the script runs. In runtime, it's going to give me the error. So that is problem number one. Problem number two is with the data types of the variable which you have asked here. In the data types of the variable, since I have not defined any data type of the variable, Python is going to decipher the data type of the variable at a runtime, which means its execution is slower than that of C or C++. How do we counter that slowness is something we are going to look into when we look into the data analysis side of things, right? So to answer your question, first answer I want to give you no, we don't define the data type. You go to any page, any documentation into Google, you will not find anywhere you can do a definition of a data type. The second problem with this advantageous thing in Python is that, see what is happening here, vname is equal to this. Maybe I'll put your name here. Fine. As you can see, I have defined vname as your name, and then I can maybe do one thing. I can simply print vAge and then also print vname. Okay. So I can see that the value of a vname variable is your name. Now what I'm doing in line number 22, I'm using the same variable vname and I'm assigning an integer value to it. Now the type has changed to integer. If I type vname here, if I am going to print a vname here, now you can see the value, the earlier one is gone, which means it is a very, very tricky thing to do. It's a very tricky language. You have to be very careful about what variable names you are using and what value you are assigning to it. The moment you assign a value of a different data type, the data type of the variable is changed then and there. You don't have any control. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, it answers. But since you said that we cannot mention the data type, so if I want to store, for example, uh, a number with
Number.
varchar or a string, it's not possible.
Uh, so you are saying you want to
Yeah.
store a number as a string.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe because it's not a metric, it's a kind of dimension.
Yeah.
So, but its value is internally and
Yeah.
a number, right? Some sort of status,
Hmm.
but it's actually not. We cannot aggregate it. So
Okay.
it's not a metric, but it's a dimension. And you're saying that we cannot enforce the string data type. It has to be number only.
Yes, but there is a way to counteract that as well. If you see what I'm doing on my screen, I'm creating a variable called vnum as string. I gave it a number which is equal to 0. I can also give it any value you want me to give here. Yeah. Then I'm putting it inside single quotes. In this case, the type of the variable now is string. And if I type the value comes as string with a single quote. So it is a string by the nature of the data type, but the value is that of an integer.
Okay. Yeah, that answers.
Okay, so that's the first thing. If no one else has any other question, maybe I'll move on with the list. So as I said, these are the most common operations which we do out of in a list, but then I would just like to highlight the most common operations that we do is this. These three will be the most common that we are going to use in, let's say, data science lifecycle. So will be this. Sometimes we are going to use the length function as well, but majorly it will be this. So what this is doing is this is called slicing and dicing of a list. Okay, very interesting name, but let me just go back to what we were doing. So in this case, let's say v num as string, right? I want to, in the same way as I did for that string, I just want the first 10 elements from the list. I do this. If I want only first 5 elements from the list, I do this. Why do I do this? The start of any list, or for that matter any variable, is at position 0, and the end I want is position 5. So I am slicing a list like list name, then third bracket, start, then I signify end. Okay. The most confusing part in this statement, in this command, is that, which is going to really confuse you, these are optional. This is really something which is interesting. See what is happening here. What happens if I simply do this? Can anybody tell me what is going to happen if I don't put start and end? If I'm just going to type this, it is going to print the entire string. Because I have not given any start and any end, it prints the entire string. What happens if I am going to give just a moment a start, let's say 3, but no end. So if I execute this, what is this? Sorry. If I execute this, I start from third position, which is 0, 1, 2, and 3. So I start from third position and I have not given any end, hence it has gone until the end. Similarly, I am giving no start but an end. Let's say 5. In this case, it went up to 5. So it is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? I gave 5. Then why did it go until 4? This is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, right? So fourth position is 2. It only printed until 2. Why is this so? This is because the end value is exclusive, which means it is always end minus 1 which will be printed. The value which you give as a start is inclusive. The value which you give as the end is exclusive. So start value is inclusive, as we saw over here. I gave 3, it started from 3, 0, 1, 2, and 3. On third I have 4, so it started from 3. So start value is inclusive, but the end value, it is exclusive. I gave 5, it went only up to 4, so it went 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So this is how it is. I just okay, no, it's fine. I think Saransh, you may have lost your audio. Yeah, it is back now. Yeah, it's back. Fine. So this is one of the most important operations that you can do on list. As I said, these slicing and dicing things, these are the most important things that we do on the list. Okay. There is one more thing that you should not ideally do, and that is what I'm going to show you, but this is something that you should really never do. Let's create a list. We list change, and I'm going to say this as 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this has 4 values. So if I print this list, I can see it has 4 values from 1 until 4. I want to, let's say, replace this value 3 with 5. So what do I do? We list change. Let me just try to print that value. What am I going to do? I don't want to signify any start and end. Can I specify? The answer is yes. I start from 0. This is 1. This is 2. Then I simply say this is 2. If I press enter or shift enter, in this case, it gives me the third value. I want to set this third value equal to 5. So I simply say equal to 5. If I say equal to 5, it accepts my entry or my command. And then if I say we list change, it has changed. This gives me 2 properties of a list. Firstly, lists are mutable objects or data types. Okay, at any point in time, you can change the value of a list. Okay, so I will change this code to markdown so that it is easy to remember. And then the second thing that we have noticed is I change this to markdown. I'll say elements of a list can be accessed and modified using its base or unique or specific position. The same thing which I did over here, right? What I did here, I selected the third element by means of 2. I know the elements is going to start from 0. So the third element is 2. I selected the third element and I have simply replaced the value. So lists are actually mutable data types. This is something that you need to remember because we are going to work with lists, but it is actually very tricky or something that we need to remember when we are doing data cleaning, data extraction, or data preparation to do machine learning or to do data science, to do anything related to statistics. Lists, as they can be changed, then there is a problem at any point in time. If in my code by mistake I have changed something, then it is changed, right? So this is something that I need to remember, that we all really need to remember. Okay. Other than that, there is really nothing that we really need to know about lists. There is a lot that we can look for in lists. I have shared a YouTube link yesterday. I will again share that link after the end of this day. You can look into that video. You will get a lot of insights about what we can do with lists and what we cannot do with lists. There is a whole lot chapter that you can do on lists. As you can see, you can also delete things from list. You can find out the length of list. You can multiply a list by any number, which is simply going to repeat that list based on the number. So example given, I multiply this list subjects by 2, it is repeated 2 times. Sometimes this is going to be useful, sometimes it is, or many a times it is not going to be useful. So there are many things about list. As you know, in any programming language there will be many things, but to do, let's say, the analysis part or the data science part, we really do not need to know everything in this programming language. We need to know what we essentially need to know. So as I said, the first three that you see over here, the slicing and dicing, is something that we need to know, that we really need to know very, very well. Okay, this is where I would request you to practice. I'll share, let's say, documentations on this, guides on this, so that you can go through them and try to practice as much as possible from your side on the lists part, especially with slicing and dicing. Try to select object, try to select object from list of lists, try to select things like that. Okay, that's really going to be helpful. I'll take a quick pause here. If you have any questions, please let me know.
No questions.
Okay. The next data type that is sometimes very commonly used into the data science area is a dictionary. So I'm simply going to come down and I'm going to say dictionary. It is sometimes used, especially when we have key value pair datasets. Now first let's try to explain what is key value, and then we are going to look at how a dictionary is going to come useful in that case. Okay, so I'll take my pen and I'm going to say that a key value is basically a data type which is quite commonly used nowadays in big data areas. Why is this used much commonly into big data areas? Is because, again, I'll go to that example of an RDBMS on an Excel sheet. What happens in a table or in an RDBMS is that I have defined, or I have created a table with column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4. Okay. I have defined 4 columns. I may have already defined the data types, and then I may have, let's say, 3 rows in which I have the data. So let's say this is row number 1, this is row number 2, and this is row number 3. Okay. So in this way, I have rows and the columns. Now in an RDBMS, when I define this, it is also called, as we already know, maybe I'll not use this, I'll use this. I'll type this. This is known as a table, which is part of a schema. Okay, I hope you're able to see this. I'll just increase I'll just increase the font. So this is a table which is part of a schema. Okay. When I say it is part of a schema, it means I've already created the scheme in which the table is going to be residing, right? So in the lifetime of this table, as long as the table exists, this scheme is going to be consistent. The scheme is not going to change. If C1 is an integer, if C2 is a varchar, if C3 is a character, it will always be a character throughout its lifetime, and the table structure will always be like this. Now, imagine what kind of problems this may create. Let's say I have an application, and this application is something like a user form. Okay, in some website, let's say website 1 has a user form. Okay, in that form I have 4 fields to enter. So let's try to define those 4 fields properly. Okay, I'll try to enter 4 fields here. So this is field 1, field 2, field 3, or maybe I'll take 5 fields. Okay, and these are the 5 fields. So every time this user form is accessed by a customer in the backend, this application is actually calling an insert statement into this table and inserting all the data for all these features or all these columns. In our lifetime, in our data analysis side of things, we will call these columns as features. So features and columns will be used interchangeably, right? Please remember that, because when we are going to do data analysis, features is nothing but columns in the data set. Okay. Now, for each and every case, because this is a fixed schema, I may need to provide the values of all these columns. If let's say I have set all of them to not null. If I have not set such kind of a constant on this schema, then there can be a problem. The problem is as simple as this. Let's say these two, the first 2 features over here are actually uh, not null columns. I'll just write n here. Yeah. Okay, and these 3 columns, let's say they are null. Okay, they are set to null, which means the user may choose to enter the values for these 3 fields. They may not choose. These are optional. You may have seen this in any website where you fill up a customer form, where there are some fields which is marked with asterisk. So these are like the mandatory fields. The ones which are not marked with asterisks, they are the optional fields, right? So let's say these 2 fields are marked with asterisks in the website, in which case the data for these 2 fields has to be always entered. But the rest 3 fields are not marked with asterisks, hence the data may or may not be entered. Which means, what is going to happen now? What is going to happen now is this. Okay, let's say there is a customer who has entered values these 2 and he has not entered these 3. There is a customer who has entered these 3 values and not entered anything else. There is a customer who has entered these 2 values and these 2 values and nothing else. Then there is the last customer who has entered this and entered only this. Or maybe the first customer has entered this value only. Are you able to understand what is happening here? What is happening here is there is a lot of space wastage. You see, this space is wasted, this space is wasted, this space is wasted, this space is wasted. If this is a table, this will be stored inside the database in form of some kind of storage, whether it is an in-memory database, whether it is a physical DB, it doesn't matter. It will be stored, and hence the size is really going to matter, right? So in this case, can we try to change the scheme of things and can we try to do something else? The answer is yes. And this is what is answered by means of a key value pair. What I can say or how I can record these values is something like this. Let me just take this and remove this from here because I no longer want to have a schema. So that is why I took an eraser and I have removed this. Now what I want to have is something like this. I want to have each and every row represented in these brackets, curly brackets. Okay, and then I want to say in the first row, the first customer entered what? Values for feature 1, feature 2, and feature 5. So I'll say column 1 is equal having a value of 1, column 2, then by comma, I say column 2 has a value of 2, then column 3 has a value of, oh no, sorry, column 5 has a value of 5. Okay. In this way, what I am doing is, as you can see, the structure can be variable here, right? In some cases, there can be column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5, but I do not need to define a schema anymore. I really do not need to define any schema. My schema can be ignored, right? This is the advantage of using a schema-less kind of an apparatus where I don't enforce any schema. Each row can be of variable length. Let's say row number 1 has length 3, row number 2 has length 5. Okay, in this case also you can see, right? Row number 1 has length 3, row number 2 has length 3, but row number 3 has length 4, while row number 4 again has length 3, right? So this kind of variability can be very easily maintained with key values. I will share some, let's say, links or from where you can try to understand more about key value, right? So this key value thing is what is being used in the Python programming context in form of a dictionary. So what we do, my dictionary, this is how I can define this using a bracket like this. I say the first key is name. Always remember the keys and values should be given inside single quotes. The keys should always be in single quotes. The values may or may not be into single quotes, which I'll write here. Keys will always be inside quotes. Values may not be. Okay, we will see why this is the case. My name is this, so I put this into a single quote. Then I say the next key is my age, and I do not put any single quotes there. I just say this, which means the first key is having a value which is my first name, which is otherwise a string. The second key, which is age, is having a value which is integer, right? Let's try to see what is the way it is represented here and what is the type of this variable. It is a dictionary and it can be printed like this. Further, if I would like to access the value, then what I can do is that I can simply try to uh, put the key inside brackets like this, and it is going to print me the output. Okay, now there comes a problem. Why is there a problem? Is because this my dict that I have created looks like a single row. It is not multiple rows. What if I have multiple rows in my data, just like we saw in the diagram? So this is row 1, then I have something called row 2 where the customer has entered age as 31 maybe, and the name is something else, unknown person, and he has also entered the value for city. Okay, and in the value for city he or she has entered Pune. So row 1 is me and row 2 is this unknown guy. Can I create a table with a collection of dictionaries? The answer is yes. Multiple dicts, I'll call this, and I'll say row 1, row 2. Okay. Now, what this is saying is it is an unhashable type, which means I cannot join two dictionaries like these. I have to find some other ways of doing this. Why is because dictionary is also a mutable field, but it is of variable length. And that is the reason why I may not be in a position to join these two rows into a single structure. Why? Because this row 1 has a length of 2 keys with 2 values, as we can see, while row 2 has a length of 3 keys with 3 values. Right? There must be some other way. There must be a very efficient way of doing this. We have to do this because otherwise then there is no point of using a dictionary, right? As we have already seen, each and every variable field row can be represented as a dictionary, which we can only make use of if we are able to combine multiple rows into a single tabular format, right? So this is something that we are going to look, but not right now. We are almost at the end of the time. We are going to end the session. We can take or we may want to discuss some questions for the next 1 to 2 minutes. If anyone has any questions, then we will make a wrap up. We'll just quickly revise what we have seen, just quickly, so that we do remember what we have seen. We started with strings. We looked into string being a list. We assigned values to lists or strings. Then we tried to reverse them. We tried to subset them, slice them, look at whether they are a palindrome or not. Then we also looked into another area of strings, which are the functions that we can use with strings. Then we looked into another very important type, which are the lists. What we can do with the list, the fact that a list can have multiple types of data in a single list. Then I could see that I could easily join two lists and I can create a list of lists. Then I saw that I can very easily slice and dice the list. The only thing is the confusing part being start and end, both are optional. I can simply specify a position or start or end or start and end. So we saw how it is actually working here. Then we also saw that lists are actually mutable, in which case we can change the value of at any position within a list to any other value similar to what we did here. And then we saw that there is another data type which is known as the dictionary. This represents a schema-less kind of a database. Schema-less DBs, also known as NoSQL database, are a very big thing by itself to note or to learn, which we may cover at a later stage. As of now, what we covered is a brief that these databases are where no schema is enforced. Based on what inputs are received from an application, the inputs are entered into the database. In the same way, we created two dictionaries. We were able to create the first dictionary, access the value of a key by means of the name of that key. So the value my first name was accessed by name. And then I was able to create two more, let's say, dictionaries. I want to use them now in the next session, let's say, to be combined into a schema-less kind of a database or a table where there is no fixed schema. As you can see, first row has 2 columns with value. Second row has 3 columns with 3 values. I'll save a lot of space and I'll be more efficient by doing this. How and how we are going to join that is something we'll look at the next class. Any questions before we close?
No questions. I got the point. I got your point actually.
Okay, then what? Okay, just a moment. I think Rohit is typing something. No, he's saying there is no question. Fine. Okay, then maybe I'll stop my screen share now. I'll stop the session as well. The moment I do, I'll get the recording. I will get the link of the recording after, let's say, half an hour to 1 hour. I'm going to send you an email from my email ID with the notebook that I've used and the code, and then also the documents, right, that I wanted to share. Okay. Other than that, what I wanted to say is maybe Abhay, with you, I'll discuss actually separately on how to have that Anaconda installed and how to run the IPython notebook or the Jupyter notebook that we are running over here. This might be something new to you, so I'll have a quick word with you offline.
Okay,
Okay.
no problem.
Okay. I think if that's it, then we can close the call. Thanks all and good night.
Thanks, Bhumik. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Good night.